Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome. We are indeed glad you are here. We're coming to you again, and as always, from Middletown, Connecticut, birthplace of Sherwin Williams, whom I'm sure you all recognize as the guy who invented paint. I'm very pleased to welcome my guest today. His name is Mark Reid. He has dubbed us the Marx Brothers. And I will let you know that Mark is coming to us today from Japan, where it's 2:00 in the morning, as I understand it. So, Mark, thank you for being here, and also thank you for staying up all night.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Mark. It's just another opportunity to drink coffee. I'm a coffee hound, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I hear that. I got mine right here. Always. The question then, I guess, is, if you drink that much coffee at 2:00 in the morning, can you get to sleep?
Yeah. Well, I cleared my calendar tomorrow just for you, Mark. No problem. I have a very flexible. I'm sure as we get into things, I have like three. I don't want to say sources of income. There's three main things I do, and fortunately, all of them have some flexibility built in. So I cleared my morning calendar so I can take a morning siesta.
Okay, very good. Let's see if I can do this right. Tomorrow for us is today for you.
Correct. I live in the future.
Okay.
Yes, it is Tuesday.
Oh, yes, you do. Okay, so I do want to get into the things that you do to pay the bills, but I would like for you to share with the rest of the folks here who don't know you a little bit of your background. That is to say, Alabama native. Do I remember that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, law student, lawyer, professor.
At one point.
Yeah, and now, God bless you, Japanese paper maker. So, could you take us through that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, because this was not by design, as you know, our paths in life very rarely are. I could have never imagined winding up being a paper maker in rural Japan. Where do I start? I was born. Did I start like Charles? What is it? What's the Charles Dickens story? The David Copperfield. Anyway, I was born, and I grew up for the first 21 years of my life was spent in Alabama. So I didn't do much traveling. For me, growing up, going to Six Flags over in Atlanta was the most international I got. And but you know, when you're 12, that's, you know, it might as well be a foreign country. But you know, traveling and going places, it was just, I don't know, it was in my heart from the very beginning. You know, I loved maps. I know that sounds nerdy and dorky and everything, but when I was a kid, I would just like look at maps. I don't know, I was just I still am. I still am fascinated by, you know, just borders and maps and stuff. So I would it was just in my mind and in my heart growing up. Anyway, I went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and I studied Japanese as a minor on a whim because I had, for the dumbest of all reasons, I had grown up, and like a lot of boys, when you're growing up, I was interested in martial arts. So I had studied judo and aikido and stuff, and all I could do was count to 10, because when we're doing some of the reps, like Ichi Sanchi, you know, you learn to count to 10. So why not minor in that? That was crazy, because that's all I didn't even know konnichiwa, you know, and but I stuck with it, and you know, through that process developed a love for the culture and the people and the food, and it wound up being my first job out of college, was teaching English in junior high schools. and that just set up the stage for the rest of my life. I haven't been in Japan that whole time. I came and went from there. I went back to the United States, but it put the travel bug in me. I went and lived in Greece at one point in time. I
Mm.
uh, I've been in London for a few months, like at a time, and lived in Korea for a year. So it started. It was the catalyst that started the rest of my adult life, so to speak. Should we stop
And,
there? I don't want to just ramble for 20 minutes.
no, no, actually, I would welcome that because your story is just so amazing. So, was it um, different opportunities to work that led you to all of those places?
No.
Just wanderlust?
Yeah, more of that. Because the Greece one, I'll tell you this just a brief story about what happened there. So I'd spent my first year in Japan, and then I came back to the United States to go to grad school. I went to Florida State, go Seminoles, for the master's degree in philosophy and ethics
Hmm.
via the Department of Religion. So, as you're well aware, I'm sure there's not a lot of want ads saying philosopher wanted when you finish your master's in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, what do I do now? And so I uh I I was watching a TV show that was on A&E, and back then there was a show called the Top 10. And each week they featured like top 10 things, so top 10 cheeseburgers in America, whatever. And I happened to be watching I'm telling the this is 2 a.m. talk. I'm telling the wrong story. I am telling a story that comes after Greece. I'm trying to tell you how I got to Greece. No, no, no. I'm sorry. Let me just
Don't be
back up a little. Let me back
don't
up a
be
little.
sorry.
It's real close in the chronological order of things. When I finished that master's in philosophy, okay, I also didn't know what the hell I was going to do with my life at that point. I did the backpacking thing through Europe. So for months I spent in Western Europe, and I wound up in Greece, and I wanted to make my way to Santorini, and I'm on Naxos, and then I was on Eos. And while I was on Eos, I started on Naxos and I couldn't find anything. But when I went up on Eos, I just started asking, just knocking on doors like, hey, I want to stay here in Europe longer. Do you need somebody to pull weeds or paint these white and blue, the Greek houses you see in calendars and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need some touch up paint, just whatever was available. And a couple of people said, yeah, and so I just worked back-breaking work for, the equivalent of like a feta cheese pie for, dinner. I worked for nothing, but it was a chance for me to just live on a Greek island for months. But I was young and able to do such things back then. Anyway, that's how I got to Greece. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I love the idea that you said before that travel was in your heart.
Yes.
So, among other things, when I think of you, I think of change and how easily you seem to change. And I've heard people say that you stay in circumstances until the pain of staying in those circumstances becomes greater than the fear of changing.
Hmm.
You That doesn't seem to be true in your case. And what do you think it is or was about you that made you so receptive to that?
I love that expression. And you know what? It may be true in my case, but just it's the pain of boredom for me.
Yeah.
It's the pain of like I'm bored. I gotta do something next. I gotta do something else. Which is, admittedly a lot less painful than actual physical pain, being in an abusive relationship and changing because of that. But, after 3 or 4 years of anywhere, I've only now recently in the last 5 or 6 years, come to a place in my life where I'm like comfortable saying, okay, I'm actually going to be okay here, maybe for the rest of my life.
Mm.
But my whole life was spent like 3 years here, 3 years there. Where's the next three gonna go?
I well, I'm during the first break. I'm going to find something for you about boredom, but I love that idea, and I do recognize that boredom can be extremely uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I don't. I mean, I don't travel the world the way you do, but I don't deal with boredom very well either.
Mhm.
Um, so I do understand that your wife is Japanese.
Yes.
Where or when in your travels did you happen to meet her?
We actually met nearly 20 years ago. We didn't get married until 2019, but I was so this is my third tenure in Japan. Like my first one I mentioned at the beginning was
Mhm.
1997 to 1998. And I mean I was a boy. I had just turned 21. I was a boy barely becoming a man. And then I did other things, grad school, Europe, all that stuff, Vermont. And then um I got a job up back in Japan in '04 and '05. I had built my resume up a little bit, so I actually got a teaching position at Kanagawa University, and then later at Tokyo University of Science. And I got that by way of a company that is the third party that arranges such things, like that finds people, Americans or British people, Australians that have the degrees and the ability and puts them in universities
Mhm.
through that company, which is based in Tokyo. And I had done well. I'm sorry, I had gotten good reviews and everything at Kanagawa and at Tokyo University of Science. So that company actually promoted me in house and wanted me to be a part of their curriculum development team. So the second year I was there, 2005. I was just based in Tokyo and just going to an office, and I would fill in if a professor got sick or something like that.
Mhm.
But it was through that scenario, through that company, that I met my wife. She was kind of my boss, but not really. She was really in a different department, but
Now she's your boss.
she's still my boss. But that's how we met, and we dated then, but then we were both younger, and you know how way leads on to way. And I ventured away from Japan at the end of '05, but we kept in touch. And to make the long story longer, or to answer your question fully, uh in around 2018, we always kept in touch, you know, birthdays and stuff, how you doing? And then 2018, I said, why don't you come visit me in America? And I happened to be back in Alabama at that time. And she did, and met my family, had a wonderful time. And then at the beginning of 2019, she said, well, why don't you come visit me in Japan? And I did, and I just refused to leave.
Wow.
There you go.
Um, was paper making already your wife's art, or was it something that you two created together?
At that time, it was already hers. She had been an urban dweller like me all her life. You know, her childhood bounced around a lot of places, but she pretty much claims to be from Tokyo. Most of her young life was spent in Tokyo, and she had done some international stints in somewhere in Italy, Milan maybe, and
Mm.
then she had always lived in big cities, and it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know, it was her version of a midlife crisis, maybe. And she found out this government program that, you know, Japan wants to preserve. It's a 2,000-year-old culture. They want to preserve the stuff that people aren't normally doing, like paper making. And so they offer subsidies to preserve that culture. So she found an internship here in Yamaguchi, which is far away from Tokyo, and out in the rice fields. And but they would pay her to move here and learn the craft of paper making. So it was a surprise to me, you know, just like it is to everyone else when they hear about it. But I was like, I'm sorry, you're doing what? You're making paper? Wow. But you know, I'm also in the midlife crisis decade, so I was like, well, sounds good to me. Beats lawyering.
I've never been able to determine the difference between a midlife crisis and a second childhood.
I always look at it as like it was never really a crisis for me, and it was
Yeah,
never you know, it was really an awakening. I call it a midlife enlightenment.
yeah.
You know,
I do know that, and I do know that feeling. For whatever this is worth, I don't even feel like I don't even feel like I had any meaningful sense of myself until I was well into my 40s. And I didn't quit the job I had to start my own business until I was 50. In fact, on
There,
my 50th birthday.
wow. See, there you go.
Yeah, it's just, it kind of feels like, I don't know, rebirths or something. So I want to ask you, how does a philosopher slash ethicist, and I love I guess I'm going to call them philosophical connections between those two things and the law. How does such a person decide to become a lawyer?
Well, I'll tell you that doing one will make you give up the other. And
Yeah.
that could work either way. But what it did is it was the reason why I left the practice of law. Um, you go in, most people, not everyone, you go into the practice of law with these grandiose notions that you are in favor of justice and you want to do some good. And then, yeah, then you get to the reality part and it doesn't matter which side you're on because there's something. I don't want corrupt is not the right word, but there's just something that lacks personal morality on every side of the practice of law. And but to get to your question, I had the philosophical roots, which is technically a good grounding for going to study the law, because you're making Socratic logical arguments, and no matter what you do. But yeah, it's a dirty business. I couldn't stay in it.
Um, is finding out how precious little justice there is in the law, is that a philosophical crisis? I mean, I could obviously I didn't become a lawyer, but if I had, I could imagine I probably would have been quite idealistic about it. And and then I would have been blown up by what I discovered, and I probably would have considered that a philosophical crisis. How did that sit with you? I mean, obviously you got out of the practice, but how did it sit with you?
Not too well. You would. So what would have happened to you, Mark, had you gone that route, is that you would have, and stayed in the law, you would have been a a professor. You would have taught the law because you can be idealistic about the law and teach it.
Oh, oh, it's only in its application that it's not just.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And but yeah, it didn't sit well with me. I mean, I would lose sleep at night. And it was the irony is I'm making more money at that time than ever. And I'm sure you've heard money doesn't buy happiness. And
Yeah.
it doesn't. I can assure you it doesn't. I mean it helps. I'm not saying money's bad. It's nice to have money, but that's not the only thing you need. That's not the only component that will get you to that big H word, happiness.
Yeah. I don't have any burning desire to be broke, but
Right.
there are times when I'll say to people, there are rewards other than money,
Hmm.
and they'll look at me like I'm nuts. But it's true, and I don't know if this is true, but maybe you just have to live long enough. Maybe you just have to get old enough to recognize that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think because it's like, I mean, it's a grass is greener on the other side kind of argument because when you get money, you then have both lawns. You don't have to look at the other side, and then you realize like it's just grass on both sides. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like sure, money is nice, and it gives you opportunities to do different things. You can't deny that, but after a while, there's still that lingering feeling of like, well, is this all there is? Just more, I can buy more toys now, I can do, and toys are nice. Go and play, travel's nice. Like I said, I'm not saying don't seek a few bucks and you're like, don't go after wealth. Wealth is fine. but there is more to life than wealth.
Yeah, I've among the things I've learned is that what appears to be a quote unquote perfect life is not. And I've known people who have lived what seemed to be perfect lives, and people whom I thought, and maybe I didn't think enough, but I thought they had it made.
Me too.
And found out I was wrong. Even in some instances, had those people take their own lives because they were so miserable, and I didn't know it.
Well, I know we're coming close to a break, but when because I don't want to dive too deep before we have to cut it in the middle,
Okay.
but a topic that we might discuss that it's just been on my mind lately is, regrets, like, because I'm of the opinion that we, you're no matter what you do, you'll have some sense of regret about something. But when you realize that you needed the things that you did that were stupid, you needed the things that you did that you regret to get to where you are now. If you're happy at this point now, you need that stuff, you need that junk, that crap, that stupid stuff. So how can I regret it? I mean, yes, I've made dumb decisions just like every human being. I've said stupid things just like every human being. But all of those things got me here, waking up at 2 a.m. talking to you, which I'm ecstatic to do.
Speaking of regrets, yeah, and also I would imagine it goes without saying that all of those things that you wish you hadn't done, whether you categorize them as regrets or not, if you're halfway awake, they're also opportunities to learn.
They should be.
Yeah.
Some people don't learn, right? Some people,
well, true.
But yes, they ideally, you, instead of going back and feeling pain all over again for that stupid thing you said in 6th grade, which, it's dumb to have, when you think about some embarrassing moment from 30 years ago and you feel embarrassment all over again, and then you realize, like, I'm probably the only person on earth that even remembers that moment.
Yep. Yeah.
Instead take that energy and say, all right, well, what's the lesson? And then just make yourself a better person from, having done whatever it was.
Agreed. Okay, let us take that first commercial break right now, and we will come back, pick it up again with regret, and we'll see you all in 3 minutes.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. Mark, welcome back to you. Before we jump in here, I told you that I was going to share something with you about boredom. And I'm not a guy who has ever responded to Louisville Sluggers. If you want to get something through my head, it's most effective to use a Nerf bat. So I found this, believe it or not, can you see this? Yeah, in a book called Fool's Paradise.
Yes.
By a guy named John Girach, who is nominally a fly fisherman, but he's a philosopher. And he wrote this: I've come to think that getting bored only means you've failed to master the fine art of doing nothing when there's nothing to be done. A skill you can learn from any house cat. I absolutely love that. And
me too.
Going back to regret, which you mentioned just before the break, and
sure.
I guess coming to think that things that you've done that you regret are stupid. This may not make sense to you, but I frequently, especially when I begin working with clients, I frequently have them say to me, my website is just awful and I'm embarrassed by it and I have to get rid of it. And I always say to them, one, it's a sign of evolution and the evolution of your thinking that you're saying that to me. But I have to ask a question, which is, when you did that website, or in this conversation, Mark, as it pertains to anything that we might have done in our lives, did we deliberately make decisions we knew to be wrong or to be boneheaded or to be destructive?
I certainly have. I 100% have. I even questioned at one point in my life, like, do I purposely sabotage myself? Like, yes, for sure. But then there are other times when we just make we make the wrong choice in hindsight. We always think we're making the right choice at the moment that we're making it, right?
Yeah. And were any of those situations in which you just suggested you deliberately made bad decisions, were those during or after adolescence? And I ask that because adolescence is the point in our lives when we're supposed to be boneheads.
Right. This is really confession time here. And when I was an adolescent, so to answer your question, both. I've done both as an adolescent and then beyond. Um, when I was an adolescent, there would be times, I don't know what this is saying about me. Somebody could analyze this, but there were times when I did purposely act out for the sake of what is the reaction going to be. Like almost like in an Andy Kaufman-esque kind of way. Like I just would, boldly. I was my class cut up, in the high school yearbook for 3 years, and I just purposely do things or say things that like even it was okay to me is if it was funny to me, it didn't matter if no one else even laughed. Like
Mm.
I would do it to see like, well, what kind of reaction can I evoke here, whatever, provoke. And I did eventually, thankfully, move away from that sort of adventurous style of comedy. But but I did, I don't know. There's certainly decisions I've made in my adult life that I think, what was why would I do that? Why would a rational brain make that
Mm.
choice?
Well, and is is that judgment about rationality also retrospective?
Maybe. I don't know. We'd like to think, right, that we act rationally. We hope because there seems to be some order to that. But when we act without order, well, then what do we have? Chaos, disorder. Like we long. I think there's a human longing for structure and order, tidiness, and
Yeah.
but at the same time, there's this innate animal that wants to break all the rules.
Jordan Peterson once made the suggestion that even lobsters have hierarchies. I love that whole idea, and it certainly speaks to your point. I would equate some of the boneheaded decisions I made actually to what I've come to believe about what I will not call the justice system, and of course, it has to do with divorce.
Hmm.
And when I think about whom I chose to marry now, I think, well, what in the world were you thinking? And then it was the experiences in court that taught me. I'll call it the court system and I'll call it the legal system, but I won't call it the justice system. So I see those two things as connected. Um, but I didn't knowingly make a bad decision then.
Hmm.
I mean, I certainly thought I was doing the right thing.
Well, I when I talk about regrets and I'm talking about them in sort of this vague way where people are like, "What all did he do? Did he kill somebody?" And, it's nothing like that.
Yeah,
Um, but in fact, one of my big quote unquote regrets, because I'm mentioning this one because it gets to the point of you can't really look back and say it's a regret.
right.
It, this is one that comes to my mind sometimes. I worked for JetBlue, the airline, in its infancy. Like I was in the door before it was barely 1 year old. And so I
Mm.
even had met David Neilman, the founder of JetBlue. And, within 6 months, I worked there about 6 months. And within another 6 months, I would have been in the corporate office there in New York. And I mean, I, I would be on the board of directors. I would be a vice president of something in JetBlue now if I had stayed. And so, I can look back at that and like, wow, why didn't I? I could see that JetBlue was going to be a major carrier, at least domestically in the US. And I had this opportunity. I was in the door before everybody else. Why didn't I stick with them? But, and this is the point, if I had, and let's say I had a nice little, I don't know, apartment in Manhattan or Queens or wherever, Brooklyn, and I'm making six figures or more and whatever. I've got a wife, 2.3 kids, whatever the average thing is. And there would be I would be on somebody else's podcast right now, and I would be saying, God, why didn't I go to Greece when I had the chance? Why didn't I go to Japan that second time? I would be regretting the things that I did do that I am happy that I did. So I can't regret leaving JetBlue, because all of the way leads on to way things led to me being here now, which I love. So I can't regret it.
I when I left the job I had at 50, I was terrified. But the only thing that scared me more was
Staying at it.
waking up at 60 having not taken the chance.
Yeah.
And so that actually leads me all the way back to the beginning when you said that travel was in your heart.
Mm.
And I wonder, when we look at things like your decision to leave JetBlue, do we think that at whatever level, I'm no psychologist, but those things that are in our heart influence our consciousness to a point at which they also influence our decision making? Clearly, leaving there was the right thing for you to have done.
I think so, because now that we're talking about it and I'm revisiting it, I can sort of tap back into my mindset back then. I knew, I could tell even then, before JetBlue was 2 years old, I'm like, this is going to be a big player in the game. And here I knew what an opportunity it was, that I was conscious of the opportunity I was walking away from. But in my heart was like saying, dude, that is not the life. That is not the path. That is not your path. Yes, you might be a vice president of something in there at JetBlue, but that you'll regret it more. As much as you might regret, it's really like, which will you regret least is how we make choices. And I know that if I had stayed there, my heart was telling me, even at that time, you had to walk away. You've got too many more things that were meant for your story. We're all living our story. We're the heroes of our own story, right? And your story does not involve working your way up the corporate ladder at JetBlue. That's not your story. So I walked away from a good thing, on purpose.
I don't know if you know, I was writing while you were talking just then, because I wrote the phrase "the game," and I suspect it's true for you. It was true for me. And it took me a while to figure out why, but the corporate game was not something that in any way appealed to me. There was nothing in my nature that compelled me to do it. And that, of course, is part of the reason I ended up where I am. I wonder so it was not in my heart to be part of, quote, the game. Right. And I wonder if you look at your own decisions in the same way.
100%. We talked about when I practiced the law, and when I went in idealistic, and then when I realized what a game it is, again, I'm not playing this game. This isn't my story either. The only aspect of it being my story is that I ventured and found out. I don't regret going to law school. I don't regret becoming a lawyer, because had I not, then I'd be sitting here like, man, I should have gone to law school. I would be in the courtroom right now. I'd be a top-notch lawyer. I had to venture down that path to find out there's demons and dragons down there that I don't want to be a part of, but now I know. So I'm happy that I know better now, but it's a total game. And it doesn't matter. I came out of law school. My first job was a prosecutor. And, you're wearing the white hat. You're supposed to be doing good for the people and putting bad people away, or at least punishing mildly bad people in some way. And it's dirty on every side. The cops are I mean, I'm not sitting here saying all cops are dirty, by no means. Not all prosecutors are.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I saw police that would overcharge, which, I mean, the charging decision was ultimately up to me as an ADA, but I saw police doing things they shouldn't be doing. kind of breaking Fourth Amendment rights of search and seizure, but I'm on their side, they're on my side, they're supposed to be. And I mean, I would get in arguments with the cop. Nobody liked me, by the way, because in the courtroom, I'm about to send you to jail or get you a fine. You're going to lose your license because you were driving intoxicated. The cops didn't like me because I was too lenient. I was still the ADA you wanted to get. The judges liked me. That was about it. But anyway.
Yeah, I there have been times when I thought I might have made a really, really good prosecutor, but I only would have been that until the point at which I had to make some ethical concession or concede my integrity for an ostensible verdict. That would have done me in. I want to come back to that actually, but we're going to take our second break right now, and we'll be back in another 3 minutes. Please stay with us.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I was connecting a bunch of dots, I think, Mark, during the break, and I was thinking about change and regret. And just before the break, I wrote I wrote regret, and then right next to it, I wrote curiosity. And a lot of things that I've done in my life, I did to satisfy my curiosity. Two maybe extreme examples. Um, in my younger life, I did more drugs than could have been good for anybody. But
We
I satisfied my
we,
curiosity.
we would have been good friends. Go. I'm
Yeah.
just saying I've been in the same boat.
But I satisfied my curiosity and I was all right with that. And,
Mm,
one of the people who I would have said had it made asked me when we were in our 40s if I wanted to trip again. And I said, I don't know about you, but I feel like I made it to my 40s, so I don't have to be curious about that anymore. I,
right.
I I got tattoos because I was curious about the experience. What is that like? Do you ever think, and I suppose this is regret, but do you ever think about the price of your curiosity?
Oh, uh, sure. And in fact, the the blessing or luck, whatever you want to call it, that I made it through those curious times because, I also sampled what the world has to offer in a variety of ways, and so many times, so many ways that could have gone awry. That could have gone in a different uh nightmarish direction, and so glad, so grateful that it didn't. So lucky. And um yeah, my curiosity, it almost killed the cat, almost killed me, but and I think about the quote that you earlier from the book. I've forgotten already the name of the book but you held up, but
Yeah,
about
fool's paradise.
yeah. And what I loved that quote so much. And when you mentioned the word curiosity, I immediately thought, and in everything you were saying, when I was a young person, yes, my curiosity was leading me to Greece or wherever, or to Vermont or to California, to South Florida, all these places. And then now my curiosity, it might sound boring to a young person, but my curiosity is right outside my door. I didn't have to go to Greece
Hmm.
to be curious about the butterfly that's outside my, there is a world of interesting stuff right where you are, no matter where you are in the world. And it took me 40 plus years to figure that out, that I don't have to go to the other side of the world. I mean, even though I am on the other side of the world, I don't have to keep going to the other side of the planet to find those things. It's right here. It's right where you are.
Funny you should say that because just yesterday, um, my sister and her husband were up from Virginia Beach over the weekend and brought us a bunch of plants. And my wife loves gardening. Um, but the ground around here is rock and clay. So to get those plants in the ground, yesterday I was outside swinging a pickaxe, and
Nice.
it was so gratifying.
Mm.
And I was thinking, wow, I can still swing this thing with authority. It felt good to get those things in the ground. So I know exactly what you mean. And I'm gonna confess a regret. And then, well, certainly a second thought. And then I'm gonna just mention what its benefits have been. I
Sure.
was on a program recently and somebody asked me if I could name one thing that I really regretted having done, could I do it? And the answer was yes. And when I was in my adolescence in high school, uh, after school one day, I blew up a kid's locker.
Oh, wow.
Did I know somebody wasn't going to be walking by at the point at which that locker blew up? Nope. Did I know that that person wouldn't take a face or a body full of shrapnel from? Nope. However, those things that I did that were either incredibly stupid
Mhm.
or things that I did to satisfy my curiosity, those actually informed the way I raised my sons.
Hmm.
So I do I wish I didn't do some of those things? Yes. But to regret them would be to overlook what they taught me and what I was able to then pass on. And I don't think you need to have children to be in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy perspective. And I certainly, I certainly view my regrets as teachable moments. Even I don't have children, but just to myself, and I am hopefully a wiser person than I was at 14 or 24. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I'm sure whether you have children or not, you encounter other people, and
Well, I'm a teacher, I teach
there you go.
people out of my home, and I teach people online, and so yeah, for sure, my experiences and my uh lucky bypasses with a disastrous fate have molded me into a person that, well, one is very understand. When I was a prosecutor, I had a case. I had a case. This is not one of those that I regret for the game, playing the game. This was a case that I'm glad I was there, that I was the prosecutor on this case, because I worked with about 7 or 8 other ADAs, and the guy whose office was next to mine, we just, I mean, we were philosophically on opposite sides of the
Mm.
fence. I was the ADA you wanted to get. I was the understanding one. He was one that if the police charged it, I'm doing everything I can to convict you, no matter
Oh,
what the circumstances. It's like he left the discretion to the police. Whereas our job as prosecutors is supposed to be, we are the ones that have the discretion to decide, okay, this is being overcharged, or actually this is worse than what the cops thought, or whatever. Anyway, I digress. There was a case, this kid, he was driving a car. They were, this is rural upstate New York. And, people who don't know New York they just think New York City. When you get outside of New York City, New York might as well be Alabama. I mean, it's rural. It is like, there's just fields and farms and
mhm.
conservatives, and, it's, uh, James Carville calls Pennsylvania, which is next door. He says Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west, and Alabama in the middle. And New York is almost like that. And anyway, I was an ADA in the rural, in the Alabama part, in the upstate New York. And this kid, he was driving a car. There were a bunch of kids hanging out, age 17, 18, drinking beers and stuff. And a girl gets on his car, and he's trying to be funny. And he revs the car up, he runs or something. I remember all the details, but she falls off the car and she hits her head. They have to call 911. They have to helicopter
Oh,
airvac her out of there. She almost died. She almost died. And so he's in the courtroom, you know, I he's charged with a lot of stuff. Reckless endangerment, of course, and things like that. And I can get the feeling of just remorse and what a boneheaded thing that was, how stupid that was, that he feels all those things. And his parents are in there. And I didn't do this, what I did, because his parents were in there or anything like that. I saw myself in the kid, and that while I didn't do that exact boneheaded thing, I could have, I might have. And I
mm.
know that that kid every day is thinking about the girl that got hurt and all this stuff. And so I put on my ADA mask, and I was tough in the courtroom, but inside I knew what I was going to do. And so I kind of like not gave him a lecture, but gave the courtroom a lecture about, the stupid things we do in life. And I said, but then I gave him what's called an absent, no, what's it? I've forgotten. It's been years now, but I gave him a break. Basically, if he didn't do anything else that got him in trouble for the next 6 months, this would go off his record. It'd
Hmm.
go away. But if he did something else, if he did an assault or something, or breaking in or whatever, he'd be charged with that and this. He would face the wrath of both. And of course, he was just like sweating and yes, sir, went along with it. And I don't know. I tell you that long story just to say that, like, we all make mistakes, and the dumb things I did in my youth got me to the point where I was compassionate towards this kid who did a really dumb thing.
You remind me, my wife and I just within the past few days watched Compulsion, which is the fictionalized version of the Leopold Loeb case from the 20s in Chicago. And they were represented by Clarence Darrow,
Mm.
whose argument,
The monkey,
closing
yeah,
argument, went on for 2 hours,
yeah.
to get these to get their lives spared. So I want to ask you one other question. Um, I think there are some things that we can overtly recognize, whether we're talking about parenting or teaching, that we do to, I guess I'll use the verb benefit, to benefit people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's necessary to recognize all of those things? I don't. I think that, I remember learning the distinction between doing things right and doing right things. And again, maybe it's just a matter of having been fortunate enough to live long enough. But
Right.
like the idea that there are rewards other than money, doing right things feels like its own reward to me. Even if
Right.
I'm not aware of what payoffs have been. You
Right.
think
It's
that?
well, wait, ask your question again. Do I think that recognizing all of
Yeah,
those things?
the things that we might, the ways in which we might benefit people, either by things we do with or for them, or things that we say to them. I don't, the way we
To,
might influence them positively.
I don't, not only do I not think it's necessary, I almost think it's here's the philosophy side. If we're going to end on something deep here, I almost think you shouldn't, like it's a selfish thing. If you're doing something for because you want to feel ooey gooey because you did something for another person, that of itself is a selfish act. Like the Boy Scout who helps the old lady across the street because he wants a merit badge or he wants to like look good. Well, then he's not really doing it for the sake of the helping. He's doing it for himself.
Hmm.
And that, you know what? Let me add just a little asterisk caveat to that. That's still better than something else he could. That's still better than something else he might be doing. I'd rather
Agreed.
him, even if he's doing it for himself. Good on you. I'd rather you do that than, drinking with your buddies and drive some car. I heard a woman has to get medevacs. Referring to the other story. I'm glad you're helping an old lady across the street, but if I do something good, at least in my mind, I want to be doing it for the sake of good, not because, hey, look at me, I'm a good person,
Yeah.
Because I'm not. I'm a human being. I
Right.
have, I have plenty of selfish desires, and I eat too much chocolate cake. I don't know. I do lots of bad stuff. Lots
Uh,
of selfish things.
Mark, I am really sorry that I have to tell you that our time is up here. But because I think we could do this forever, we might not get the chance, but I would very much like the chance to do it again.
Sure.
Um, Sorry, I'd have to keep you up till 2 a.m, but
That's okay.
I appreciate you and I appreciate your staying up. So thank you. Thank you very much for being here. And everyone else who has joined us today, thank you for being here. I'll be back 2 weeks from today with another show, and I look forward to seeing you then. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Rachel, thank you. Mark, thank you again. I will get the MP4 file of this program